Do you ever feel like you're stuck in survival mode? Maybe you're constantly unsettled or anxious and you can't really put your finger on why. Many women, particularly Black women, feel like they're in a perpetual struggle with anxiety, underlying fears, hesitation, and negative feelings about their self-worth. These struggles can severely impact our libido, our sexual health, and our overall quality of life. I'm Dr. Janet, a board-certified obstetrician-gynecologist, a medical doctor, an intimate health coach, and hypnotherapist, with over 25 years of experience working with women. I help women over 40 improve things like low libido, hot flashes, poor sleep, mood, and emotional blocks, so they can feel like themselves again and feel peace, passion, and pleasure in their lives. In this video, I'm going to explore how some of the negative emotions and behaviors that we struggle with, especially as Black women, may actually be tied to our ancestry and the generations before us. And I'll talk about what we can do to reset painful emotions and stop the self-sabotaging behavior that can get in the way of our intimate health and relationships. Before we jump into the details, make sure to subscribe to this channel and share this video with a friend that you know needs this information. When you subscribe to this channel, it not only can help you to improve your life, but it can help other women find the information they need and get the help that they need. So let's jump in. When you find that you're perpetually struggling with these underlying feelings and emotions, unsettled feeling, anxiety feeling, again, a lot of times this is associated with something from our ancestry. Sometimes this struggle happens in women who have had a traumatic experience themselves. But I see this a lot of times with women who have very stable lives. They grew up in very loving and stable homes with no history of trauma, without any drama around them, and they have good support systems with no personal history of trauma, and yet they often have these paralyzing emotions. This often gets in the way of you taking care of your health, showing up for yourself, expressing yourself creatively, and pursuing your dreams, because anxiety and fear can hold you back. So why does this happen? This may lead back to ancestral roots, oppression in your family and your ancestors' experience, acts of violence in your lineage, family separation or displacement, being on the receiving end of hatred, fear, poverty, and lack. This is not just a spiritual or psychological effect of knowing your history either. This is actually in our biology and is known as epigenetics. Epigenetics is the study of how our environment, our experience, and our lifestyle can affect our genes and the expression of our genes. Our environment, our experience, and our lifestyle can change the way your genes are turned on and off and how our DNA is expressed in the body. If you think of genes like piano keys, you can think of epigenetics as the song that is played. So the order that the keys are played, how loud they're played. So it's an expression of what's already there. So the key point here is that stress, trauma, sleep, food, relationships, hormones, and thoughts can all influence the way the DNA is expressed. Scientists are learning that stressful and traumatic experiences in one generation can affect the bodies and health of future generations, even if those later generations never lived through the trauma themselves. We're also seeing more and more research showing that racism and discrimination are linked to real, measurable biological changes in Black people in the United States. These studies show a clear pattern. Long-term stress shows up in the body on a deep cellular level. And this is epigenetics at play. So again, epigenetics is the study of how your environment, your experience, and your lifestyle can change the way your genes are turned on and off and how the DNA is expressed in the body. There are two processes that explain epigenetics. One is something called histone modification, and the other is something called DNA methylation. Histone modification is basically how tightly DNA is wrapped. Another way of looking at this is how easy or difficult it is to read that genetic material. The other process, DNA methylation, is like a dimmer or mute button on the genetic code. You can think of it like tiny dimmer switches on your DNA and on your genes. So it turns certain genes down or off without actually changing the DNA. And these DNA methylation switches or dimmer switches are influenced by things like stress, environment, hormones, life experiences, and even our thoughts and beliefs. So what does this look like in real life? In one large study of Black women, researchers found that women who reported more everyday experiences of racial discrimination also showed changes in these gene dimmer or mute switches, the DNA methylation. They also showed signs of faster biological aging. And that means that their cells looked older than their actual age. This suggests that the stress of discrimination can leave physical marks in the body. And this may help to explain some of the health disparities we see in Black women over time. In another study, researchers found that frequent experiences with racial discrimination were linked to changes in how stress-related parts of the brain communicated with each other. These changes were also linked to faster biological aging. This is really significant for women in perimenopause and menopause. There are drops in the level of estrogen during perimenopause and menopause, and the stress centers in our brains are more sensitive to these drops in estrogen. This can lead to increased stress, changes in mood, changes in libido, and even hot flashes. This has been demonstrated in animal studies as well. In one famous study, scientists taught male mice, to fear a certain smell. And this is before these mice had any children, so they had not had any baby mice. And even though the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of these male mice were never exposed to the smell, they were highly and unusually sensitive to that smell. And their brain showed changes related to fear when they were exposed to the smell. This showed that a parent's experience can influence the biology and behavior of future generations through these epigenetic changes. My main point with all of this is that stress, trauma, and long-term pressure that our ancestors experienced can shape how our genes behave and how our nervous system responds now. And the feelings that you are experiencing today and struggling with today may be totally unrelated to anything that you've experienced in your life. It may actually be related to something that your ancestors experienced. It may be that you're living out an inherited agreement that you never chose. Some agreements or patterns were actually survival tactics or unspoken rules that were followed for safety from harm. To not be too visible, to not make too much money, don't be too loved, don't outshine anyone. Don't succeed too much or something bad might happen. And a lot of women are paralyzed by these unspoken rules. And it actually holds them back from being kind to themselves, from celebrating themselves, from wealth, from healthy, loving relationships, from growth and expansion. And in other parts of our family lineages, there are unprocessed emotions and unprocessed traumas, anger that was never processed, harm that was never repaired, and fear that became a part of our identity. Ideas about scarcity and lack turned into common sense. These narratives become soul contracts, and they can lead to feelings of rage, lack of boundaries, wearing an emotional mask, and not being yourself. It can lead to finding yourself repeatedly in dangerous and toxic relationships. And also a sense of scarcity and lack and constant, difficulties with money and finances. The good news is that we can change our environment. We can change our stress, and we can change our response to stressful things. And as a result, change the way our genes are expressed. We can reset the nervous system, break those old belief systems, and improve our emotions and well-being. This can be done by tapping into our natural mind-body connection with specialized meditation and hypnosis. One of the ways that I do this with my clients is with an ancestral healing and soul ties reset hypnosis. It's designed for clearing out inherited DNA signaling that leads to cycles of fear, anxiety, and hesitation. This ultimately allows us to reset patterns of rage, guilt, and shame, and breaks you out of loyalty and allegiance to pain and suffering that so many of us are unknowingly carrying. If you're a woman over 40 and you feel like you've been in survival mode, feeling unsettled, and all of this is affecting your intimate health and libido, and you're ready to reclaim your emotions and put joy and freedom back into your intimate life, click somewhere around this video to register for my free training webinar. Thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.